He thought he could erase me from my husband's life, but the moment the banker opened that envelope, his face went pale. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Lauren Miller. I'm 34 and I live in a quiet town in Ohio. Just a year ago, I thought I had everything I could ever want. I was married to Ethan, a man who loved me deeply and made me believe in forever. He wasn't rich or famous, but he worked hard, treated people kindly, and had this calm way of making everything feel okay. When he laughed, I laughed. When he dreamed, I believed in those dreams with him. Life felt normal, safe, and simple, until it all changed in a single night. Ethan had a sudden heart attack while driving home from work. I still remember the sound of the phone ringing that evening, the police officer's voice trembling as he said Ethan's name. I remember my knees giving out, the air leaving my lungs, the room spinning while I tried to understand words like accident, hospital, and gone. In one moment, I went from being a wife to being a widow. I lost the man who made my world make sense. I couldn't even think straight for weeks. People came by with flowers and casseroles, said things like stay strong, and then went back to their lives. But I was stuck, frozen in that empty house, surrounded by memories that now hurt to look at. During those first few days, Ethan's brother, Ryan, stepped in. He was polite at first, even comforting. He said he would handle the business side of things, the bills, Ethan's company accounts, the insurance, all the stuff I couldn't bring myself to think about. I was grateful then. I thought he was helping me out of kindness. But slowly, I began to notice a shift. The warmth in his tone faded. He started speaking to me like I was a guest in my own home. When I asked about some documents or the house payments, he'd wave me off, saying, "It's all taken care of." Sometimes he'd mention things that made me uneasy, like how Ethan's business was family property or that certain accounts didn't belong to me. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining it. Grief makes you doubt your mind. But the looks he gave me, cold, distant, almost smug, told me I wasn't wrong. I could feel something was off, but I didn't have the strength to question him yet. Days turned into weeks. I tried to focus on breathing, eating, just surviving. But in the back of my mind, a quiet voice started whispering that maybe Ethan's death wasn't the only loss I was about to face. Maybe Ryan wasn't helping me heal at all. Maybe he was already planning to take everything Ethan left behind. I met Ethan when I was 25. I had just started working at a local real estate office, and he was one of the contractors our company often hired. From the very first meeting, there was something steady about him, the kind of person who didn't talk too much but meant every word he said. He had a quiet strength that drew people in. When he smiled, it wasn't the kind of smile that tried to impress anyone. It was warm, real, and it made you feel safe. He built homes for a living, but he also built dreams. His small construction company wasn't huge, but it was honest. People trusted him because he cared about every detail, and he worked long hours to make sure his clients were happy. He used to come home with sawdust still clinging to his hair, joking that it was his work perfume. I would tease him, but deep down I loved it. It smelled like hard work and love, everything that made him who he was. We got married 3 years after we met. It wasn't a fancy wedding, but it was perfect for us. Just family, close friends, and laughter. We didn't need much because we had each other. Our home wasn't big, but we made it warm and full of life. We spent evenings cooking together, dancing in the kitchen to old songs, or just sitting on the porch watching the sunset. We talked about kids, travel, and growing old together. But life has a cruel way of changing when you least expect it. A few months before his death, Ethan started feeling tired more often. He brushed it off as overwork, saying he just needed rest. Sometimes, he'd come home and fall asleep on the couch before dinner. I worried, but he didn't want to go to the doctor. "I'm fine, Lauren," he'd say, smiling in that calm way of his. I believed him because I wanted to. The night he died still feels unreal. He had called me before leaving work, saying he'd be home soon. I cooked his favorite dinner, waiting for the sound of his truck pulling into the driveway. But instead, I got a call from the hospital. They said he collapsed on the road. By the time I reached there, it was too late. His body was still warm when I held his hand, but his heartbeat was gone. I remember begging him to wake up, as if love alone could pull him back. After the funeral, everything felt heavy and confusing. There were papers I didn't understand, contracts, accounts, business form. Ethan had always handled that side of things, and now it all sat in front of me like a foreign language. That's when Ryan stepped in. He said he'd manage the finances, handle the accounts, and make sure I didn't have to worry about anything. I wanted to trust him. I needed to. At that moment, I thought he was doing what family should do, helping me through the hardest time of my life. I didn't know then that his help would soon turn into something else entirely. The weeks after the funeral felt long and empty. I tried to pick up the pieces of my life, but everything reminded me of Ethan. his boots by the door, his coffee mug still sitting on the counter, even his jacket hanging on the chair. I couldn't bring myself to move them. I told myself Ryan was taking care of everything, just like he promised. He said he'd handle the business accounts, make sure the bills were paid, and keep things running until I could stand on my own again. I believed him. At first, he checked in often. He'd drop by with files or updates, but over time, those visits grew shorter. His tone changed, too. The warmth he showed right after Ethan's death faded into something cold and sharp. When I asked small questions, like about the mortgage or utilities, he'd act annoyed, as if I was bothering him. "It's all under control," he would say, never looking me in the eye. Then little things started happening. The electricity bill came in late. Then the car insurance. I thought maybe it was just the system adjusting after Ethan's passing, but soon letters from the bank started arriving. Not the regular kind, but the ones marked final notice in red. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, opening envelope after envelope, my hands shaking as I read words like overdue and insufficient funds. When I checked my joint account, the balance was almost zero. It didn't make sense. That account had been our safety net, the one Ethan always kept full. I thought maybe there was a mistake, so I went to the bank myself. The teller pulled up my information and hesitated before saying the account was recently accessed by Ryan. My stomach dropped. I drove straight to Ryan's office, holding the bank letters in my hand. When I walked in, he barely looked up from his desk. I tried to stay calm and asked, "Why is the mortgage late? And why is our account empty?" He sighed like I was a child interrupting him. Then, without emotion, he said, "Lauren, you don't own anything. Ethan's business wasn't yours. It was part of the family trust, our family's. I'm just following what's right." For a few seconds, I couldn't speak. His words didn't even sound real. I stared at him, trying to understand if I'd heard correctly. "But Ethan and we built that life together," I said quietly. He just shrugged, his face blank. "You were married, yes. But the company, the assets, those were all established before you came into the picture." It felt like the floor dropped out from under me. I left his office shaking, not just from anger, but from disbelief. I had trusted him completely. Ethan always said Ryan was good with business, that he could be counted on. But standing there in the parking lot, clutching those letters, I realized something painful. Ryan wasn't protecting Ethan's legacy. He was erasing me from it, one document at a time. After that confrontation, everything between Ryan and me changed. He stopped pretending to care. Whenever I tried to reach out, he ignored my calls or sent short, cold replies. I could feel him pulling away, but what I didn't know was that he was also working behind my back. It started with small things, a few family members not returning my messages, or canceling plans to visit me. At first, I thought they were just giving me space to grieve, but soon, the silence became too obvious. When I finally saw Ethan's mother, she looked at me different. Her warmth was gone, replaced by a look I had never seen before, suspicion. During that visit, she mentioned something that made my heart stop. "Ryan told us everything, Lauren," she said quietly. "We know you only cared about the money. Ethan's been too kind, but now that he's gone, we have to protect what's his." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I tried to explain, but she just shook her head. She said Ryan showed them papers proving Ethan left everything to the family trust, and that my name wasn't mentioned anywhere. I told her there must be a mistake, but she wouldn't listen. Her words cut deep. "You had your time with him. Now it's time to move on." When I got back home that day, I sat on the edge of the bed and cried until I couldn't breathe. It felt like losing Ethan all over again. Only this time, it was his family turning their backs on me. The same people who once called me their daughter-in-law were now treating me like a stranger. Days passed, and I started noticing how completely alone I'd become. Friends from Ethan's side stopped calling. His parents stopped checking on me. Even mutual acquaintances acted distant, as if they were afraid to take sides. It was like Ryan had erased my place in Ethan's life, not just on paper, but in people's hearts. But the thing that kept me awake at night wasn't the isolation. It was confusion. Deep down, I knew Ethan. He wasn't careless or secretive. He always made sure everything was in order, and he had talked about wanting to make sure I'd be okay if anything ever happened to him. He wasn't the kind of man who'd leave me with nothing. I replayed our conversations in my head, especially the ones about his business and savings. He used to say things like, "If anything ever happens to me, you'll be fine." I made sure of that. Those words started echoing in my mind more and more. Something wasn't right. I could feel it in my gut. Ryan was too calm, too confident, and the way he avoided my questions made me certain he was hiding something. Ethan might be gone, but he wasn't the kind of man to let greed destroy what we built together. If there was a truth buried somewhere, I knew I had to find it, no matter how painful it might be. I couldn't stop thinking about Ryan and the way he had taken control of everything. The more I replayed the past weeks in my head, the more I realized I couldn't trust anyone to just tell me the truth. If I wanted answers, I would have to find them myself. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I decided to start going through Ethan's things. I knew he kept meticulous records, files, receipts, bank statements, everything neatly organized in folders and envelopes. I began with his office drawer. There were stacks of papers, some labeled personal, others business. I didn't understand all of it, but I carefully went through each envelope, looking for anything unusual. Most of it was normal: invoices, contracts, letters from clients. But then I found a small, unmarked envelope tucked behind a stack of construction contracts. Inside were bank statements I had never seen before. They were in Ethan's name alone, linked to a private account he had never mentioned. My heart started pounding. Why would he hide an account from me? I went through the statements, flipping page after page. Then I saw it: a transfer made just 2 days before his death. A large sum of money had been moved to a family business account. It wasn't the usual deposits or payments for work. It was something different. My hands shook as I looked at the numbers. That transfer explained why Ryan suddenly had access to funds and why he had been so confident. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to calm myself. I didn't know the full story yet, but my gut told me Ryan had something to do with this. Everything about him these past weeks, the coldness, the lies, the way he had convinced the family I wasn't entitled to anything, pointed to him. But I couldn't confront him without proof. I needed something solid, something official. I kept digging. I checked Ethan's emails and phone messages. I looked for anything that mentioned money, business, or the family trust. Most of it was routine, but I noticed a few messages to the bank with unusual instructions, messages Ryan could have intercepted. That made my suspicion grow even stronger. I knew I had to be careful. One wrong move, and Ryan could destroy the evidence or try to make me look foolish. I decided to make copies of everything I found and keep them hidden. I would need them later when I finally confronted him. That night, sitting alone in the dim light of Ethan's study, I realized something important. Ethan had always been careful, always planning ahead. He wouldn't have left me with nothing by accident. Someone had tampered with his plans, and that someone was Ryan. I didn't have all the answers yet, but I finally had a lead, a trail that could prove the truth. I just had to follow it carefully. The next morning, I decided I needed help from someone who really understood Ethan's finance. That someone was Mr. Jacobs, the banker who had managed his accounts for years. I felt nervous walking into his office. I wasn't sure if he would take me seriously or if he would side with Ryan, but I knew I had to try. When I entered, Mr. Jacobs looked up from his desk, a kind, serious man in his 50s with glasses that always seemed slightly crooked. I took a deep breath and explained everything: how Ryan had taken control of the accounts, the letters about late payments, and the mysterious transfer I had found. I could feel my voice shaking, but I didn't stop. At first, he was quiet. He listened, nodding slowly, not interrupting me. Then he leaned back and said, "Lauren, I've known Ethan a long time. He was careful. He planned things in a way that would protect the people he cared about. He wouldn't leave you with nothing." His words made me want to believe him, but I was still scared. Then why is Ryan acting like that? Why are the accounts empty and the family turning against me? I asked. Mr. Jacobs hesitated, then spoke slowly. "I can't say for sure, but it sounds like someone may have interfered with the arrangements, Ethan. He had specific instructions in place before his death, instructions that were meant to secure your future. If Ryan had access, he could have tried to change or hide them." Hearing him say that sent a shiver down my spine. My suspicions about Ryan were growing, but I still needed proof. "Is there a way to see those instructions?" I asked. He nodded cautiously. "There is. The first step is an official audit of all accounts and transactions that will show exactly what happened in the days before and after Ethan's death. And there's one more thing. Ethan kept a safety deposit box. He never told anyone what he put inside, but I know it exists. It could contain the documents you need." I felt a spark of hope. A safety deposit box could hold the answers I'd been searching for. "Do you think it's safe to check it?" I asked. Mr. Jacobs gave a small, reassuring smile. "It's your right. Ethan made sure you would have access. But be careful. Whoever is trying to take advantage of you won't want you to find the truth." I left his office feeling both nervous and determined. Finally, I had a path forward. I had a lead I could follow, a plan to uncover the truth. It wouldn't be easy, but for the first time since Ethan died, I felt like I might actually have a chance to fight back and reclaim what was rightfully. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the safety deposit box and what secrets it might hold. I knew the next steps I took could change everything. The day I went to the bank to open Ethan's safety deposit box, my hands were shaking. I had no idea what I would find inside, but I knew it could change everything. When the clerk slid the small box across to me, it felt heavier than I expected. I took a deep breath, unlocked it, and lifted the lid. Inside, there were a few envelopes and a small leather folder. I opened the folder first. My eyes fell on a piece of paper that made my heart stop. It was Ethan's will. Not a copy, not a typed version, but his real, handwritten will, complete with a notary's stamp. I felt a mixture of relief and fear. Relief because I knew he had planned for me, and fear because this could put me directly in Ryan's path. I read it carefully, line by line. Ethan left everything to me. The house, his small construction company, the savings, and even the personal accounts I had never known about. Every asset he had was mine. And then I saw a note addressed specifically to Ryan. Assist Lauren with everything she needs, but do not take control. She is my wife, and this is her future. I felt tears prick my eyes. Ethan had thought of everything. He had made sure that even after he was gone, I would be protected. My mind raced back to all the lies, all the cold stares, and the way Ryan had tried to push me out. It all clicked into place. Then I remembered the probate documents Ryan had submitted. I pulled out the copies I had collected over the past weeks and compared them. My stomach turned. The document Ryan filed in court was fake. Ethan's signature had been photocopied onto a form that named Ryan as the trustee. Every line was carefully altered to make it look official. I sank into the chair, clutching the will. The betrayal hit me harder than I expected. This wasn't just greed. This was calculated. Ryan had planned it, executed it, and tried to cover his tracks. He had lied to the family, lied to the bank, and lied to me. Every action, every word over the past weeks suddenly made sense. I felt a mix of anger and determination. Ryan thought he could erase me, but Ethan had left a way for me to fight back. This was the proof I needed, undeniable proof. My grief was still there, but it was joined by a fierce clarity. I wasn't just a victim. I had the truth on my side. That day, holding Ethan's real will, I made a silent promise. I would reclaim everything he had left for me. I would expose Ryan's lies and make sure justice was done. The betrayal had been cruel, but now, for the first time since Ethan died, I felt in control. I knew the next steps I took could change everything, and I was ready. The morning I decided to confront Ryan, I felt a mix of nerves and determination. I had all the evidence I needed: Ethan's real will, the copies of the forged documents, and the bank audit Mr. Jacobs had helped me prepare. I wasn't going to back down this time. I called Mr. Jacobs first, explained everything, and asked if he could come with me as a witness. He agreed without hesitation. When I walked into the bank, Ryan was there, sitting behind the same desk he had used to dismiss me weeks ago. He looked calm, even smug, like he expected me to be intimidated. I took a deep breath and sat down opposite him, letting the folder with Ethan's real will rest on the desk. Mr. Jacobs stood quietly beside me, watching everything. I slid the folder across to Ryan slowly, keeping my hands steady. "Look at this," I said softly. "This is Ethan's real will, handwritten and notarized. It names me as the rightful owner of everything, and it explicitly instructs you to assist, not control." For a moment, Ryan didn't move. His face went pale as he picked up the papers and read through them. I could see the confidence drain from him, replaced by tension and unease. Mr. Jacobs spoke next, calm but firm. "I've reviewed this carefully. This document is authentic. The signature is genuine. Everything in this folder confirms what Lauren has told you." Ryan tried to respond, his voice shaking slightly. This can't be real. There must be a mistake. Ethan, he wouldn't have." I held up my hand to stop him. My voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of everything I had endured. "You tried to erase me," I said. But Ethan made sure I'd never be forgotten. He opened his mouth to argue, but there was nothing left to say. The evidence was undeniable. I could see the panic in his eyes as he realized his plan had been exposed. I felt a surge of relief, knowing that the weeks of fear, confusion, and betrayal were finally coming to an end. Mr. Jacobs picked up the phone and calmly pressed a button. "Security, please come to the front desk," he said. Ryan's expression turned from panic to desperation. He tried to deny everything, stumbling over his words, but it didn't matter. The proof was in front of us. The forged documents, the audit, and the real will all told the same story. Within minutes, 2 security officers arrived. Ryan was escorted out quietly, though I could see the anger and fear on his face. I stayed seated, letting the reality sink in. For the first time since Ethan died, I felt a sense of peace. Justice wasn't just a word anymore. It was real, and it was happening because I refused to give up. Mr. Jacobs turned to me and nodded. "You did the right thing, Lauren. He won't be able to interfere anymore. Everything Ethan planned for you is safe now." I smiled, holding the folder close. The battle was far from over, but the first victory had been won. I finally felt like I could start moving forward. After the confrontation at the bank, the next steps were all legal. Ryan was charged with fraud and forgery. The case moved quickly because the evidence was clear. The forged will, the bank audit, and Ethan's real documents left no room for doubt. I attended every court hearing, watching him struggle to defend himself. He had been so confident before, but now he was exposed for what he really was: greedy and deceitful. The day the court made its ruling, I felt a mixture of nervousness and relief. The judge read the decision slowly, making sure every detail was clear. Every asset, every account, every piece of Ethan's estate was restored to my name. The house, the company, and the savings were all rightfully mine. I sat in the courtroom, trying to absorb it. After weeks of fear and uncertainty, justice had finally been served. After the ruling, Ethan's parents came to see me. Their eyes were red from tears, and I could see the weight of guilt in their faces. They apologized quietly, saying they had been misled by Ryan's lies and that they now understood the truth. It was a difficult moment, because their anger and distrust had hurt me deeply. But I could also see that they were genuinely sorry. I forgave them, not because it was easy, but because I wanted to let go of the pain they had caused, even if it had been unintentional. With everything finally settled, I knew I had to make some decisions about my future. Staying in the same house, surrounded by memories and shadows of the past, felt impossible. I wanted a fresh start, a place where I could rebuild my life without reminders of betrayal and loss at every corner. I sold the house and moved to a small town several hours away. I found a quiet apartment, started reconnecting with old friends, and slowly began to create a life of my own again. It wasn't easy at first. The grief never fully disappeared, and there were days when I missed Ethan so deeply it felt unbearable. But over time, I realized that my life didn't have to be defined by his absence or by Ryan's betrayal. I had survived everything thrown at me, and that gave me a strength I hadn't known I had. I focused on rebuilding the company Ethan had started. I learned the ropes quickly and made changes that felt right to me. I even found joy in the small things: mornings with coffee on the balcony, dinners with friends, and quiet walks in the park. I wasn't just living, I was reclaiming my life on my own terms. By the time I looked back, the pain felt distant. I had justice, closure, and most importantly, control over my future. The betrayal had tested me, but it hadn't broken me. I had survived, and I had grown stronger because of it. My life wasn't built on grief anymore. It was built on resilience, honesty, and the love Ethan had left behind. Months after everything had settled, I finally felt a sense of peace I hadn't known since Ethan's death. My new home was quiet, surrounded by tall trees and the soft sounds of birds in the morning. I often sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, letting the sunlight warm my face, thinking about everything I had been through. It wasn't just the grief I had survived, but the betrayal, the lies, and the fear that had followed me for so long. I remembered one of Ethan's favorite sayings: "Trust is the real wealth we leave behind." I thought about how true that was. Trust had been everything in my life, the trust one had in Ethan, in Ryan, and even in his family. That trust had been broken, yes, but it had also taught me something valuable. I had learned to see the truth, to recognize the difference between loyalty and deceit, and to stand up for myself even when it felt impossible. Sitting there, I realized that my story wasn't just about loss or betrayal. It was about reclaiming myself. I hadn't just exposed Ryan's lies. I had taken back my life, my voice, and my future. I had followed the trail, found the proof, and ensured that justice was done. But more than that, I had grown stronger. I had faced the worst and survived, and that survival gave me a quiet power I hadn't felt before. I thought about how easy it could have been to let anger take over, to dwell on the betrayal and let it define me. But I didn't want that. I wanted my life to be defined by hope, by the choices I made, and by the love Ethan had left behind, not by the greed and cruelty of someone else. There was a sense of freedom in that, a freedom that came from knowing I could trust myself to do what was right. Looking around at my new home, I felt grateful for the life I had rebuilt. The walls, the furniture, even the small garden in the backyard, they were mine, just as everything Ethan had intended them to be. And yet, more than the material things, it was the peace that mattered most. The peace of knowing I had survived, that I had faced betrayal without losing myself, and that I could finally move forward. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in soft oranges and pinks, I whispered to myself, "You can lose money, love, or family, but when you find the truth, you find yourself." I knew that was the lesson Ethan had left me, and the truth I would carry forward. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to dwell on the past. I had justice, closure, and the knowledge that I could face whatever came next. And in that quiet, simple moment on the porch, I finally felt whole again.